Hey, it's Shreya from Gone Fashion Lab. Welcome to Speaking of Fashion by the Vanilla Issue. Today I'm speaking to Maximilian Raynor, whose work has dressed some of the biggest celebrities in fashion, entertainment, and culture. We talk about dressing celebrities, his time at Central St. Martin's, what's it like being a young designer in London, and the importance of building an online community, and so much more. If you're an emerging designer or a student, I think you'll really love this conversation. So go ahead, have a watch. So, one of the first things, I mean, before we get into the details, I just really wanted to understand how you got into fashion because, you went to CSM. You're also teaching there, which we have to like get deep into. But, I just want to understand, tell me a little bit more about your background. Where did you come from fashion family? Did you like how did you decide to go to fashion school? How did you get
Yeah.
into it?
Well, it's the classic, like, it's as long as I can remember. I was a child when I was already saying that I wanted to be a fashion designer. The kind of story in my family is that I tripped over my mum's foot in a car park and smashed out my front teeth quite badly. Luckily, they were my baby teeth. And in the hospital, I was on like meds and I was sort of like in a bit of a druggy state and was demanding and screaming for pens and pencils and like
Mhm.
scribbling out these scribbles that I was telling my mum were fashion designs at the age of 3. And she was a kind of like, who is this like crazy kid and where has this come from? And then that sort of love of drawing developed over the years, and I didn't really play sport as a child. I didn't really play like games or apps or anything like that. I was always just drawing all the time. And yeah, so that was kind of the earliest stages. And then as I began to read and become obsessed with stories and characters, I think those worlds blended. I was also a big like musical theatre kid, so I loved performing and acting. And I think maybe that comes across now in the way that I work, that sort of love of theatre and
Mhm.
theatrics. So those were the earliest years.
Okay. And how did you get into CSM? Like, tell me more about your CSM experience. CSM is, of course, the holy grail of fashion schools. So I would love to know how was it for you? What course did you do? And, things like that.
So yeah, I became obsessed with Sandra St. Martin's really young. I suppose because of Galliano and McQueen, the
Yeah.
classic story.
Right.
And it became this like singular obsession and goal that I wanted to go there. And I didn't get into the foundation, and I was quite devastated because I'd done a lot. I'd made like a collection every year from the age of 15. I was like doing these big fashion shows at my school in Derbyshire, and so I felt like I had this like absolute arsenal of work under my belt. But looking back now with what I know, that sort of vast number of garments were not really developed in the way that St. Martin's would
Mm.
want. It was very much like glamorous evening dresses for friends back in Derby, and it wasn't really rooted as much in the zeitgeist of what London is about. And so I then went to Ravensbourne for a foundation for a year,
Mm-hmm.
and was able to kind of channel what I had, which was a knowledge of fabric, of color, of proportion. But then I was able to kind of have that align with more zeitgeisty research, more finger on the pulse of like what is urgent in London right now, and that approach, I think, was really helped by Ravensbourne. And then I didn't get in again, and I was like, what? I was just like so devastated. So I went to
Mm.
Kingston for a year, which was an amazing experience. It was during Eleanor Renfrew's time there, and I was thinking of staying, and then I overheard in the school canteen that somebody else was reapplying to St. Martin's, and the bitterness and jealousy I felt in that moment, I thought was a pretty toxic thing to feel. So I went home that night and reapplied on UCAS. And I thought, if you want something that badly, you don't give up. And then
Mm.
that time was just like a breeze, and my interview was so smooth and so chill. And I just think at that point I was ready. And so I enrolled then at Central St. Martin's on fashion design with marketing, which is now called fashion design communication, and
Right.
loved it. And then yeah, the many years that followed.
Right. So you didn't get into CSM two times, and now you teach as an assistant faculty. Like that is a big jump. How did
Yeah,
that
yeah. I
happen?
mean, I also teach on the foundation that I didn't get onto, which I kind
Oh,
of love.
okay.
But things take time, and there's always reasons for the journey that you end up going down, and you can use that time old phrase, everything's meant to be. But I think it's more that you take what you're given and you work with it. And if you're ambitious and driven, no matter how many no's you get, you can flip them and turn them into future yeses. And like, that's definitely what I've done. And now I lecture with Stephanie, who is the head of fashion design communication at St. Martin's. I lecture on the foundation as well. And so, yeah, I'm glad with where it all ended up with the whole
Oh,
CSM journey.
that's amazing. That's such a full circle moment.
Yeah, it is. It
So
is.
you've experienced the institution both as a student, as a teacher. How, like, is there any difference or contrast do you see?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of law around Central St. Martin's, and there's a lot of
Hmm.
misinformation. There's a lot of ambition and aspiration, and I think people do become quite obsessed with it because it's seen as the best in the world. But actually, I think there's brilliant institutions all over the world, and certainly all over London. Um, and St. Martin's is not for everyone, and I think that we need to demystify the institution that it is. And
Hmm.
I think what's so special about it is that it is quite ruleless, and you can study in a way that is free of the kind of formulas that exist in other establishments. This idea of getting people to be really employable and doing lots of tech packs and lots of other things that actually are the skills you do need when you get into the industry. But instead, St. Martin's puts the focus on incubating creativity in its rawest form, and I found it to be a very liberating environment surrounded by people who kind of don't care what anyone thinks about them, and the expression of queerness is very inspirational in that environment. The way people dress, the way people put a look together, it's like you just have this daily visual diet, which is so, yeah, inspiring to the way you then work and channel that into your research. Certainly
Hmm.
then, I mean, as a tutor now, I do think that I don't see as much expression as I definitely saw when I enrolled. There was that account, That's So CSM. I don't remember it. I don't know if people remember it, but it was like this sort of diary of all the different characters that exist in the library. And maybe I'm
Hmm.
just not there enough, but I don't see it as much now. So I hope it does return to the kind of like absolute madness and freedom and chaos in the way that people dressed when I enrolled in 2018 or whatever year it was.
Right. I think after that, after the pandemic and everything, maybe things have changed. Everything has changed. I think maybe that could have
Yeah.
played a role.
Yeah, so much changed, and now being on the other side of it as a tutor, there's a lot of anxiety in students, and there's a lot of
Yeah.
fear. I think, people are so painfully aware of how competitive the industry is, and I think people
Right.
always were, but maybe there was more of a gung ho
Hmm.
pre Instagram virality. I think there was a big moment that sort of changed St. Martin's, when those
Hmm.
Frederick's balloon pieces went viral. And then I feel
Right,
like
right, right.
I really noticed a shift in that moment, this genius moment that Frederick created. But then it
Right.
felt like people were pursuing going viral rather than just creating incredible collections.
It's great that you mentioned that because that is one of the that was one of my first exposures to CSM, and that is when I was getting into fashion. That has
Right,
been
right.
such a turning point for me because I remember that watching that video so clearly. It was a
Yeah,
big
because I
moment.
think what Frederick achieved there was he distilled everything that St. Martin's is about, and
Mhm.
everything. It was so it was so simple, and
Yeah,
some could say gimmicky, but I don't think it was, because sitting there, I remember sitting there, it just felt
yeah,
poetic. It felt like it captured the time and the moment, and sort of these characters behind this translucent latex. And it
right.
was really special. But then what happened after that is I felt and observed this pursuit of gaining 100,000 followers in 2 weeks, which is what happened
Hmm.
for him. And that trickle effect still reverberates, not just at St. Martin's, but all over the world, with students thinking that the way their collection will be received on Instagram is some kind of measure
Right.
of the success of what they've created. And it's
Yeah.
absolutely not the case. And the best collections are the ones that are completely authentic to what that person wants, whether that person wants to design a brilliant, very desirable pair of jeans, or whether they want to
Hmm.
do the wildest inflatable garment. it has to be because they want to do that, not because they want to gain traction on socials.
Right. And I think now that social media hype approach is just trickling up everywhere. Every luxury brand is trying so hard to go viral. It's really
Mm,
sad the way that it's turned into a marketing tactic, which eventually everything turns into a marketing tactic.
yeah.
But
But you can
but yeah.
also look at it in another way. Like maybe that's cynical of me, of us, to
Hmm.
think that virality can be quite special as well. Like sometimes things go
Right.
viral just because they are brilliant.
Right.
So you know that you can look at it with two hats.
Hmm.
And people that have a great knowledge of marketing do extremely well,
Right.
especially in this era that we're in. You know, many of the
Hmm.
great successful alumni from St. Martin's are people that understand marketing. People like
Hmm.
Connor I, Harris Reed, and you know that it's not always about the design, and sometimes I think students focus too much on what they're making and not what they're going
Hmm.
to do with what they've made when they've made it. And the amount of
Yeah.
students I tutor who have no plan to how they're going to market the final collection, they haven't really consulted with their network or their community of like, how are we going to shoot this? What is the art direction? Who is the
Hmm.
cast? What emerging makeup artist are we going to bring in on this? How are we going to shoot it? Is it going to be a film? Is it going to be an animation? Is it going to be a total social media free exhibition and panel discussion? And so when I'm brought into the final years at St. Martin's by Stephanie to tutor them in the final weeks before they
Hmm.
show, the key focus of what I do with the students is talk about, okay, great. I'm not going to talk about what fabric you're picking. I'm not going to talk about color palettes or shapes or any of the things that normal design tutors would discuss.
Hmm.
We spend the entire tutorial discussing how they intend to market it to the world, and if they are
Hmm.
anti-social media, what are we going to do instead? And
Right.
I hope that that kind of like approach is really helpful to them in those final weeks.
Right.
Yeah.
No, makes sense. So, as someone who's running an independent brand themselves, and as someone who's interacting with young designers and students, how much of a gap do you see between how ready designers are to run a business? Because, that is one of the things that people like. I've seen so many amazing brands right out of a college who were doing amazing, but the brands don't exist anymore. So, what do you think
Yeah.
about that gap?
Well, I mean, it's a near impossible task to translate a creative graduate collection into a functioning business, and certainly at places like Central St. Martin's, you're really not designing product with the mind to sell it.
Hmm.
And so then you have this tricky period where you're like, what do I do with all these ideas? How do I sustain an income? And quite a lot of graduates and students are entertaining the idea of having a brand or are certain that they would like to launch their own brand, as I was.
Hmm.
But there's this huge transition that you have to go through, and I thought doing the MA would be the thing that helped to teach me how to translate that period, how to transition, sorry. And in
Hmm.
many ways it did, and in many ways it didn't, because I feel like the MA is there as a platform, and I loved it there, and I really respect like Fabio and Debbie and the whole tutoring team there, and you learn how to understand yourself as a designer, which actually in the end helps to translate into business. But we
Hmm.
certainly didn't talk about registering as a limited company versus as sole trader. We didn't talk about,
Right.
how to deal with accounts. We didn't talk about, if you're going to employ someone, are they employed as a freelancer, or do you have to register with HMRC? Like all these
Hmm.
incredibly boring things that I've now learned in the last 2 years since leaving the
Hmm.
MA. It was touched
Right.
upon in one workshop on the last week of graduation. I thought, oh gosh, I wish we'd had like a whole year of this,
Yeah.
for students that are intending to launch their own brand, to opt into these kind of seminars around what
Hmm.
it is to launch a business, because I had to learn very quickly how
Right.
to run a business. And I didn't even have a business card at the start of
Hmm.
launching, so I was doing transactions on my personal like Santander business card, and not business, personal card. And so it's really simple things that would be very obvious to anyone who'd studied business, but are
Hmm.
quite an abstract concept to people who've spent time learning how to, you know, design, not to launch a business. So yeah, I do think, if it's an answer to the question, it's that I think maybe some of the unis could spend more time on business and how
Hmm.
to launch this.
Right.
But
No,
yeah,
definitely. Yeah, no, definitely, definitely. And after your bachelor's, you also worked at JW Anderson. I would love to know more about your experience there. Or was that before, after your master's?
it was actually during my BA. It was only an
Okay,
internship, but it
okay.
was an amazing one. And I was working very
Mm-hmm.
closely under Sean McGear, who's of course now creative director of Alexander
Right.
McQueen. And it was a very small team. It was myself, Sean, and a guy named Doan, and we were the
Mm-hmm.
three on menswear. And so I loved that. At that time, Jonathan already had the support from LVMH. He was working at
Mm-hmm.
Loewe, and it was COVID as well. So Jonathan was obviously spending a lot of time in Paris with Loewe,
Mm-hmm.
and so there was this independence that Sean had, and I was very very inspired by Sean, and he was an incredible mentor. Had a very kind approach. He let us be very independent. I mean, I really was left to develop an idea and sample it and discuss with product development, and then eventually you would take that in a fitting to Jonathan and Benjamin.
Mm-hmm.
And you were kind of there for the entire start to finish process. And were given a lot of trust. And if your research was picked, you would then work on that research. If your design was picked, you would then work on that design. And so it was a crash course in product as well, and not just designing wild things for social media, but how can we do a beautiful trench? How can we do
Right.
something for Uniqlo or for Montclair? And
Mm-hmm.
I Jonathan is a genius. He's like the genius of our generation, and I was very lucky to have spent some time in his proximity to see how he worked and how that studio worked. And I learned a lot, and hopefully take that through into my practice. And to see Sean as well, to go on and have
Yeah.
this career at McQueen is very
Yeah.
inspiring. And so yeah, that was the Jonathan Sean McGear era.
Well, that's amazing. You have worked with two of the biggest creative directors in the industry right now. That you cannot buy that kind of experience. That's incredible. So actually, this is a question just popped in my head. So Jonathan is at Dior now, of course. His
Mhm.
Dior has been rather controversial. So I would
Yeah.
just love to know what you think of that.
Well, I love it. I really love, particularly the menswear. That I think Jonathan is best at menswear, in my opinion.
Hmm.
Just he captures how I would want to dress and how a generation of kind of
Hmm.
young guys probably do want to dress, and strikes that
Hmm.
balance, something fresh and new with something very understandable and archetypal.
Hmm.
And then, the exploration in couture is really interesting. And sometimes it takes longer for things to land as well. Like I
Hmm.
revisited the Dior couture up close and thought, wow, no, this really is incredible. And the way that it's inspired by an artist as well. So I think if there's any takeaway, it's like just give things more time and actually look at them. And I think we see
Right.
these immediate, same with Sean McGear,
Mm.
like, the
Right.
immediate response from everyone on the internet to McQueen without really
Hmm.
fully digesting what's being
Right.
offered. Maybe I'm biased because, I respect these
Yeah.
these two men so
No,
much.
I think that's a very consistent problem with social media, right? People just jump to conclusions without even knowing anything about the collection. There's a I hate
Absolutely.
this or I love this, which is so
Yeah.
unfair, and especially with Couture Week and everything, where like, it's taking like months and years to make a look. You can't really judge it via an emoji on your story. It's really sad how,
Yeah. Or
yeah,
just like, I don't know if people do watch the whole shows, but I feel like people
most
receive it
people
all through like,
don't. Yeah,
yeah, and then they form an opinion with that. It's kind of like judging a film off the advert without watching it. It's like you
exactly,
can't write a
exactly,
review of a film if you haven't seen it, and that is what's happening all the time
exactly.
now. Um, but everyone's entitled to their own opinion, and that's
Right.
the era of social media. It's not a new thing. I mean, we
Hmm.
were having conversations when I did a show studio panel when I was in first year
Hmm.
at uni. So there's nothing new here. But hopefully, as we progress, people are, and they definitely are, becoming more skeptical of social media, and they're becoming
Hmm.
more invested in how they consume. Um, so I do feel that you know there is an optimism, and there has been for a long time an optimism in the air. Whether it's going to translate or not, I don't know. But I try to be a bit more immune to all of that kind of thing now, like especially with my own brand.
Hmm.
Um, I don't really think response on social media is really very real. Like, you know,
Hmm.
where, and TikTok's really interesting as well because people are very, very free with compliments on TikTok. Like, I get sent like wild messages and like really amazing comments. Like, and you sort of, if you had an ego or if you believed in social media, you'd start to believe like, oh my God, my work's actually amazing because all these people are telling me it is. But I think it's better to just not listen because then what would happen in reverse if they all started telling you it wasn't good? If you believed the good, you would then believe the bad. So I think it's better to just
Right.
not really listen to any of it and just trust the people that you trust and whose taste you trust, not some random person in somewhere in the world. Of course, it's flattering
Right.
that they love your work, but it could very
Hmm.
quickly change. So I try not to put too much weight on it. I'm grateful that for now, I'm not trolled by anyone when we put things out. But it could,
Yeah.
as I grow, it could quickly turn. So I try not to listen, I suppose, is my point.
Right. And this brings me to one more point that I've seen a lot of designers talking about how they are forced to design for social media.
Mm.
Like we discussed with the balloon looks. And that was still a graduate collection, so it's different. But someone who's running a brand, like the inevitable pressure to follow trends, the inevitable pressure to sort of hop into some, whatever core is going on at the moment. Do you also feel that is something that that designers are struggling with right now?
I definitely don't feel that pressure, no, because I think maybe it's my Science education, maybe it's some like inner thing, but like I only design from the heart and from instinct with my team in a studio. We don't do trend reports. We just don't look at anything. It's purely my taste. It's purely what I
Mm,
respond to, the way something, is worn by a stranger in the street or this sort of character that I've designed in my head. So the idea of
mhm.
a core coming into that has never ever been a factor for me. But I'm lucky because I'm not stocked globally by stores that maybe are demanding a certain thing. The
Right.
moment that my clothes become widely and readily available globally to a mass market, then there would probably be pressure from buyers and from executives that are saying, this is going to be the next big thing. We need to have this color, or we need to have this kind of cut, or everyone's going to go
Right.
skinny jeans soon, so you need to do skinny jeans. Like, this is a
Right.
problem for much bigger businesses with stockists and with ready to wear. My current
Mm,
business model is largely driven by rental, by garments being hired out, and also by
mhm.
custom made for celebrity
Right.
clients who, are it's them. All that matters is what they want and what they love from what I've done. So there's a luxury
Right.
to be in a position. But when you talk about
Right.
scalability and like, if I'm to realize my ultimate goal of being a creative director of a house, those
Mhm.
challenges that you've just described will become very present, and we'll see how I'll navigate them if I do get into that position. But I think that there's also a fun and a joy to following the zeitgeist. I use this word a lot. That
Right.
what do people love and desire, and we don't need to always feel that trend is a dirty word because we're the
Mhm.
ones like the designers are
Creating
the ones
them.
setting
Yeah.
the trends. We don't follow the trends. We are the trend because we like
Right.
something. And if all of us, Jonathan, Sean, smaller brands, whatever, Robert, Charles Jeffrey, Simone Rocha, like we're all consuming culture at the same time as each other. We're seeing the same films, we're going to the same exhibitions, we're observing the shifts in the streets, what the teenagers are wearing, what the students that we're teaching, what the choices that they make and the way that they dress in the morning. And that is how a trend forms. It's all of us designers looking at the world, and then we put out our work, and then Zara and H&M will filter that down and put that out in a more understandable way for the mass market. So trend need not always be this dirty word. It's just the product of our imagination as a collective of creative directors filtering through into the market and then being received by people who then kind of do it in their way. And then it's like this flywheel that feeds itself. And we're also fed by it then because we're following what
Yeah.
people do as a result of what came before. So sometimes a trend is just because everyone went to see Oppenheimer and all became obsessed with 1950s tailoring.
Yeah.
It's not always a bad thing. Like it's a product of culture feeding culture.
Mhm. I think that's a very nice way to look at it because following trends has definitely become a sign of almost social class at this point. I think that's a
Yeah,
very
that's true.
fresh perspective on it because
But
I think
also,
most
like,
trends today.
that's one answer, and then the other answer is the cynical one, which is that companies, like big companies like, I don't know,
Like this,
Shein,
yeah,
Pretty Little Thing,
sharing,
are
yeah.
just like in a
Mm-hmm.
horrible dystopian
Mm-hmm.
way looking at how they can make more money. So there's
Exactly.
there's two sides to everything.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So you mentioned celebrity dressing. So you have your stuff has been worn by almost everyone, I feel, from Lady Gaga to Rita Ora. So, celebrity dressing, still like we know how it works, stylist and this and that. But I would love for you to sort of quickly describe the whole process for like a young designer who has never done it. How would they do it? How to get it done? What is the
Sure.
process? Things like that. Because I think most young designers are still struggling with it. Most people don't know what is the process, what's the industry standards. I would love for you to sort of
Sure.
quickly tell me what's your experience been like.
Okay. So I think first of all it's identifying what kind of celebrities you'd want to dress, because sometimes I speak with graduates who want to dress celebrities but their collection wouldn't make sense on any celebrity. So it's like, well,
Mm-hmm.
if you are geared towards that kind of VIP market, you might want to have like a certain element considered. Like most of the stars we dress like to have a waist, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So unless you then pick someone like Erica Badu, who's never going to want this like cinched look, gear your collection towards someone like that. Like be very aware of who you want to dress. I mean, if you look at my early work, obviously Chapel Row and Lady Gaga might like it because it's in that universe of how those women dress and express creativity. So it felt
Mm-hmm.
like, whilst I was thrilled by it and shocked when it happened, it felt very right that those would be the two women that would wear that collection. And so I think it's about being really tactful with how you design, identifying the types of people that you hope would wear it, and having that be present in your mind, but don't design for them. Because the moment you try to
Mm-hmm.
design for them, it's not really about you anymore, and they probably wouldn't be that interested because it doesn't feel as fresh. But at least be aware of them from maybe like a marketing and positioning perspective. But that doesn't really help a student. You're still sat here thinking, how do I dress a celebrity? So the point
Yeah.
is, start posting your work regularly. Social media, I think, is probably the only way to do it. If there's an alternative way, I would love to know. But for me, it was always Instagram, 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 and now obviously TikTok as well. So the more you put out there, the more likely it is that a celebrity stylist is going to see it. And it's also free. You don't have to pay for a showroom to put it in front of people. I've never paid for a showroom. I've never paid any money to any celebrity to wear anything. And I've never paid
Mm-hmm.
anybody to try and help a celebrity wear anything. And I also worry a lot about the brands that do pay thousands of pounds to be on these racks in the
Mm-hmm.
hope that a stylist is going to wear it. I mean, we've dressed most of the like major names, Lisa Rinna, Julia Fox, all these amazing women. But that's because they've seen it on Instagram, or their stylist has seen it on Instagram, or they've seen me, or they've seen a friend who's worn it. So I don't think it's because they've gone into these environments that can feel a bit stale and a little bit like they have an agenda, like they're going to push a certain name or label towards a stylist's eyes. I think stylists, they know what's going on. They're going to pick what they want. So just be as
Yeah.
authentic as possible. Tag as many of the accounts like the Vanilla Issue, Up Next Designer, One Granary, the college that you're at. When I've done stylist jobs, the first thing I'll do is go on the graduate pages tagged section, because particularly if I've been given very limited budgets or no budgets, if it's an editorial, you can use that opportunity both to expose a designer and show their work and give them some exposure, but also to actually put together a really interesting package, because you don't have the money to get it anywhere else, and you don't necessarily have the pulling power to get it from the major houses. So if you're a graduate who's expecting to dress a celebrity, but how the hell are you going to be found? You need to get active on social media. You need to tag, you need to message, you need to send your work to everyone. If that's your goal. I mean, some students' goal is not to dress celebrities, and then they feel this pressure when a peer does it, that they should do it, and that that's
Mm-hmm.
somehow a measure of success. I mean, celebrity culture is not for everyone. I mean, I found it very natural because I just love these women. I love their music.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I get along with them when I meet them. It just makes sense to me. Like, I wanted to be a singer and an actor when I was a child. I
Yeah.
understand their practice. I understand what they do and why they do it. So it's a natural relationship. But if you're somebody who was like obsessed with architecture as a child and loves sportswear, and like maybe it doesn't make sense for you to dress like a singer who's like inspired by drag. If it's not your universe, don't try and dress Lady Gaga. Find your people. Like maybe Tilda Swinton would make more sense for you, or maybe who won Wimbledon last year. Maybe that's who I want to dress, and sort of gear the clothing towards those people. It's a very long-winded answer, but the shortest answer to the question is tag accounts on Instagram, be as visible as you can possibly be, have a really coherent message, and don't be too intense when the stylist does come. I think because people are so worried about being, I don't know if I can swear, fucked over by, like,
Yeah.
they're so worried because of the horror stories that the garment's going to be lost, that they're never going to be entitled to any compensation. And this is probably quite bad advice from me, because you should put documents together and you should sign things and make sure everything's okay. But also, stylists are working at a million miles an hour, and when you get sent these like insane documents and everything around it's very anxious, I think sometimes stylists like give up and just go and deal with someone else. So I was
Right.
very, very relaxed all the time with how I dealt with things, replying quickly, just get it in a bag, whack it in a bag. It doesn't have to be beautifully wrapped in tissue paper. Most of the time, stylists, I don't know, we've never been precious with anything. And maybe that's why things happen quite naturally, or did happen quite naturally, because it was a chill vibe. It was good energy. They liked the garments. Nothing was too precious.
Right.
I don't know, but do it how it makes sense for you. If you feel anxious
Right.
around something, then make sure you
Right.
put the measures into place that make you feel reassured. It's a hard thing, the whole celebrity thing. It takes a lot of time, and it's very stressful dealing with like DHL and FedEx and sending things off. And one piece of advice would be never pay for anything. Do not pay for a package to New York because you think you want to dress this celebrity. If the stylist wants the garment, they will pay for the shipment. If they're not willing to pay for the shipment, it will be on a rail, not unlike this rail behind me. The garment will go on a rail with hundreds of other garments and most likely not to be shot. And you have wasted £200 of your hard-earned money, or your parents' money, or the money that should be paying your rent as a student, to maybe get shot by a celebrity. It's really not healthy. I think stylists know now that, okay, they might not have rental budget. That's understandable. People aren't being given budgets at the moment. But they should at least have a pot of money to ship the garment from a student. And if they don't, then it's not going to get shot, I
That's the
don't think.
bare minimum, I feel.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially for an emerging designer, that's such an unfair expectation.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
very few stylists do it, but sometimes they do. And I think it's a red
Yeah.
flag when that
And I think
happens.
that's also also a reflection sort of on who they are working for, because I wouldn't want my team to ask students to pay for a fees. That's kind of
Yeah,
unfair.
yeah. But in there's always a reason. Usually it's
Yeah.
that a stylist is, stylists are working. It's not like they have a 9 to 5 every, sometimes it's like that one job is actually what lasts them for the whole month. So though the budget could be generous on that one job, they're trying to make that last for themselves, and so they're pocketing what, the client probably thinks that budget is paying for the shipments, but that budget has to pay for that stylist's rent, because they
Right.
have to eat. So there's always a reason, and the more you get in the industry, the more you realize that it's really hard for everyone, and a stylist is often behaving
Right.
that way because they're under immense pressure, and they then don't have good leadership skills because no one ever taught them, and they don't have good budget, no one ever taught them, and they're scared for their own job and want to pocket as much of the profit from the job as possible because they're not sure where their next job is coming from. So it's a very
Right.
difficult thing. But, we're gearing our conversation towards fellow designers and graduates. And our advice to you is, conclusion is, don't lend to stylists who don't pay for shipments, and don't be taken advantage of by stylists, because a lot of the time stylists don't even tell you if it's been shot as well. That is my biggest bugbear. When they email
Oh.
you like, where can I return, I'm like, hi, yeah, can the first sentence please be, hi, thanks for lending the garment, we didn't actually shoot it, or
Right.
we did shoot it but it might not make the cut. Like, stylists need to remember that often, particularly the graduates, I mean, we tend not to care anymore because I've done so much. But earlier on, I used to care so much, and it was really depressing to not hear. And really, you know, so if young designers are listening, you know, don't be scared to be like, hi, can you please tell me whether it's been shot? You know, basic
Right,
etiquette around stylist
right,
calls are
right,
forgotten very regularly.
right. Is there someone else you still want to dress? Like, is there any dream celebrity you would love to dress, or are you done with your checklist?
No, of course, the checklist goes on and on. I mean, yeah, definitely Gaga was one, and so when that was, and Lisa Rinna and Julia Fox, they were like three that were like very high up my list. So I was very happy when those
Mhm.
happened. But there's so many,
Yeah.
like Nicole Kidman, Kate Blanchett, Lupita Nyong'o, Solange Knowles. I don't know. We've got pieces with Lauryn Hill right now. I'm hoping she's going to wear them. Like, there's so
Mhm.
many people. I'd love to do a Hollywood actress like Kate Blanchett or Nicole Kidman or Tilda Swinton. You know,
Right.
these people who are just like, you know, absolute icons.
Yeah.
That would be very exciting. But I don't pin as much on it anymore. I don't think,
Mhm.
you know, it's the first thing people ask in whether it's a podcast or an interview for a magazine or like anything. You know, people love the celebrity names that you can attach to a young designer, and we use them.
Mhm.
You know, every young designer uses who we've dressed as a way to seem legitimate. But if you're a brand or a young designer sat out there who maybe hasn't had a massive celebrity behind you, I don't think it's a failure. I think it just, if it
Definitely.
happens, great, and if it doesn't, great. You know, like what matters is people that you admire and are having a community around what you do that likes what you make, and that's how, and it sounds a bit cliche to say it, but those are the moments that matter, not the big A-list stars.
Right. Got it. Got it. Oh, I think great advice. I think people can really take away a lot from that. Now, coming to your recent showing at London Fashion Week, I want to know a little bit more about that. Again, from a student perspective, so for someone who hopefully wants to land on the calendar one day,
Yes.
how to make that happen? I know it's a very it's a question with a very long answer, but I would just like love some insights on how to get that done.
Yeah, I mean, getting on the calendar, whether that's the London Fashion Week British Fashion Council one, or the CFDA, or the Chambre in
Mm-hmm.
Paris, it is a very difficult thing, and rightly so. They have to be very selective. Luckily, here in
Mm-hmm.
London, Laura Weir has opened that. You know, she's thrown the doors wide open. It's much easier than it was before. Well, it's not easy, but it's much more accessible. I think there's a wider net being thrown. We're seeing different types of brands, different business models showing in London. The British Fashion Council has an incredibly optimistic approach. I actually think it always did. I think people, you know, they speak about the former era maybe too negatively. I think there's always been an effort, but Laura has concentrated that in a brilliant way here in London. So
Mm-hmm.
I think students should feel optimistic. There are more scholarships than before right now. There are more programs than ever before. You know, I found myself guilty of saying there's not enough support for emerging designers. And then I looked back at my year and I was like, I've been supported by so many people. Like, I did a thing with Nike, with Stavros Korellis and Madison at Nike. I did, you know, things through the MA with Doc Martens. Then, of course, the
Mm-hmm.
most help I've ever had has been from Hi-Fi, which is a new designer support initiative here in London that uses profits from commercial projects to fund emerging designers. And that was how I was able to be in a position to show on the schedule. We did
Mm-hmm.
an off-schedule show first to kind of show what we're capable of. And Liam, the founder of Hi-Fi, kind of put everything into that. It was a real passion project. We did huge set design, hay bales, tree roots coming out the ceiling, a live band, a homoerotic male ballet piece at the midpoint of the show. It was like, we're going to show exactly what we hope fashion shows can be like again. And that obviously caught the eye of the British Fashion Council. And, you know, I actually haven't spoken about it yet. Maybe this can be the first time. You know, I didn't get New
Mm-hmm.
Gen, and I was devastated about not getting New Gen because I really felt that I was ready for New Gen. I had a strong admiration for the legacy of New Gen, and for whatever reason was unsuccessful, and felt, well, if I'm not New Gen, I won't be on the schedule, and everything's a disaster. And
Mm-hmm.
then I had a great phone call with Sarah Moa, who is one of the leading supporters of emerging talent here in London. She's like
Right.
kind of like the Anna Wintour of London, I think.
Yeah, yeah,
And she said, well,
definitely.
you don't have to have New Gen to be on the schedule. And, and then I had a call a few hours later with someone from the British Fashion Council, and then we were on schedule. So it was a very, I felt, unconventional way of getting on the schedule, but that's my anxiety, thinking that there is a conventional way. And actually, there is no set route. You have to be as present as possible, as visible as possible. The British Fashion Council have to see you as, and I'm speaking about London right now, of course, each council has its different way of working. But, be visible, be unignorable. I kind of felt like my message to the schedule was, I'm going to do a show no matter what, and hopefully you can put this show on the schedule. And people are going to come no matter what, because I am out and about. I know everyone. I go to every party I can possibly go to, every gallery. I want to meet people and see people because I love the industry and I love fashion and I love what everyone creates, and I have immense respect for all these names, and having met many of my idols now, it's like you have to love it and you have to really want it. That's one thing. And then you have to have money. That's the other thing. And if you don't have parents backing you, you have to fight. So, I think it's an absolute graft, and anyone who is completely financially independent has it way harder. And it's really brutal, but there are pots of money out. I got £18,000 from LVMH for my master's collection, which was a scholarship. Without that money, would I have been able to do that film, the Manor for Heaven film, with the stately home and the car and taking all these models up to Derbyshire? Of course not. There was no money there to do something like that. But after I've paid for my life, I then used the remaining money to do that film and do something really ambitious and make that money go a long way. And so scholarships are the only way, or parents with money. It's like, that's it. Like, I don't really see how else you can launch a brand or, get on the schedule eventually. And also, once you're on the schedule, it's not like I also thought that like being on the schedule would be this like ultimate goal achieved, which it was in some way. But then it's like, that's actually the starting line. Like, that's the gun going off. It's not the running through the ribbon at the end. So then it's like, whoa. And then you get inundated with all these emails and all this, extra admin, and it can be quite stressful. So you have to be ready as well. So don't rush it. Anyone whose goal is to be on the schedule, do it when you're ready. Apply to New Gen, apply to whatever other schemes are available. If you're listening from another city, then what is happening in Paris, who are the talent support initiatives in that city at any given time. Be finger on the pulse, follow everyone on Instagram, look at the tagged in any post you ever see, follow those people, look at who they're working with, be encyclopedic in your knowledge of the industry, who's working with who, because that for me was how I was able to make it happen. Some people cannot bear all of that because it's so exhausting for them. So they have other ways. So I can only speak to how I did it. And other people are way more chill. Like, they're not as intense, and it can happen for them too. So there are other ways, and another podcast guest may well describe a different approach. But mine was to really gun for it and sprint for it and be, kind of incessant in that pursuit. And then be helped along the way. Hi-Fi, LVMH, eventually the British Fashion Council by putting me on the schedule. So it's a long journey and it takes time, and you will feel moments where you want to give up. I mean, there's been moments where I couldn't pay the rent on the studio, and I was literally giving up. I was like messaging my team, like, I think this might be the last month. And then something will come up. Like, we've been saved on 3 occasions by these jobs that have just come. Like, it's, you hear these stories and you think, oh, how does that happen? But somehow it happens, and sometimes it doesn't, and you have to give up for a bit and you have to recalibrate. I have friends that have given up for a bit, but it's not giving up forever. It's just taking time out of the race to swig a water bottle, take some energy electrolytes, and then if you want, start running that race again, or decide like, I don't even want that end goal anymore. I'm going to go and enlist in another race that's maybe not even a race. Maybe we're all sat down together, like, and it's not a competition. Like, there's totally different ways to approach this industry. I definitely ran the race of the traditional route for a bit, and then was devastated when certain milestones were not met. But then the community around what I do has supported me enough to reappraise the system that I'm in to a state where I do genuinely feel more relaxed now. I don't feel as anxious when I see the success of my peers. I feel more celebratory for them, and I also talk to them more now. Like, I love hanging out with the other designers in London, because you realize that they're not your competition, they're just your peers and your friends. And so do the same with your classmates if you're a student listening. Like, don't be threatened if someone in the class is doing really well. Just be inspired by them and their passion, and really find that within yourself, if you feel it's lacking, you know?
Right. No, got it. Okay. So, now you have entered the schedule. You've been running the brand for a couple of years and you've been dressing everyone possible. So, I just want to get a quick understanding of where do you see yourself going next? Do you want to do couture? Do you want to continue with London? Do you want to eventually show in Paris? Like, where do you see your brand? How do you want to take it forward?
I try not to set as concrete goals as
Yeah.
before, because I think the disappointment can feel too colossal,
Mm.
and to be really open to whatever route emerges. That's one answer. The other answer is I do see myself in London for the next seasons. I think there's a movement happening. Mulberry's back.
Mm. Yeah.
McQueen is back. Laura has, assembled and some great initiatives. And so, yeah, I plan to stay in London for the foreseeable, but I'm extremely open to anything that comes my way. I would love to be the creative director of a house. I think, I'd love to translate the leadership skills that I've built here with my team of amazing, interns and student graduates. I'd like to then translate that at a wider scale and do that with a bigger team, with bigger budgets and a larger outcome. I think I'm kind of like hopefully getting ready for that. So that's definitely my goal. But until that happens, how I'm going to make that happen, I have no idea. But I'm
Yeah.
just going to try and stay as present and as involved in the industry as I can, and just keep plugging away with my output,
Yeah. Okay, I have one question. Feel free to just say no if you don't want to answer it. You mentioned
Go
you'd
on.
want to like lead a house creative as a creative director. Do you have any like what would be your dream house or like brands that you would want to lead as a director?
I'd love to take a British heritage brand, so something where I can really dig into what is
Mm-hmm.
British heritage, how can I subvert that, and take it into some place that's fresh. So obviously, the brands that would come to mind there would be things like Mulberry, McQueen, Aquascutum,
Mm-hmm.
Barber,
Mm-hmm.
Burberry. But then conversely, I did the ITS contest in Italy.
Mm-hmm.
Was lucky enough to kind of like win it and spend some time with OTB out there.
Mm-hmm.
So, it could be anywhere. It could be, I'm going off to Milan after the show with Kering. I
Mm-hmm.
got the LMH scholarship. So I'm hopefully like, the groups that exist, I'm trying to, be at least adjacent to or involved with. It could be anywhere. And I think what I do is I love houses for what they offer. It could be Moschino for
Right.
its humor. It could be Dior for its legacy and florals. It could be Dries Van Noten for its, riffing on menswear. Like, it's about
Mm-hmm.
understanding the codes and DNA of any house that's thrown at you. And I think the best
Right.
designers are ones that could take, obviously not any house, because you have to
Mm-hmm.
understand of it, but
Right.
a wide array of houses I would feel ready for. It just depends who
Mm-hmm.
it would be and how it would make sense at that time for that brand strategy.
Yeah, no, makes sense. I would love to see you at a house. That would be insane.
Fingers crossed, eh?
Fingers crossed.
It's probably going to be a long time. I don't know. I mean, some people it happens quick. Like Maximilian Davis went to
Yeah.
Ferragamo so quickly, and Harris went to Nina
Yeah.
Ricci, but then
Yeah.
Grace Wales Bonner. It's taken a long time before Hermes. So,
Yeah.
and that might be out of choice, or that might be out of
Right.
it not having been the right time.
Yeah.
So things
Right.
take time.
Right. But slow and steady wins the race. So you never
Yeah,
know.
who
Yeah. And I
knows?
think, you might get a lot more time to sort of build your own brand a bit more and, be more
And also
publicly
like
mainstream and things like that.
collaboration as well. Like, I'm sat wearing this John Smedley collaboration that we're launching, and like
Mm-hmm.
something really exciting about going into a heritage brand for like one season or one capsule. Or I worked with
Yeah.
Kimono Eyewear in Antwerp,
Oh, yeah.
And so it doesn't always have to be necessarily like an appointment yet. It might just be collaborations, slow but steady. You know,
Right.
we've worked a lot with Gola, the heritage sportswear
Hmm.
brand, as well.
Yeah.
New and unique ways of generating either sponsorship
Right.
money or a little bit of, you know, revenue from a percentage of a
Hmm.
collaboration sale. All these things add
Right.
up and in the end
Right.
hopefully represent a strong offering to an executive who's
Right.
employing a
Yeah.
creative
I
director.
think one of the best examples for that was the Montclair series and also the Jean-Paul Gaultier
Yeah,
couture.
so
I want to see
cool.
something like more. I think nothing is happening right now similar to that in fashion. I think someone needs to really
Yeah,
do it. Yeah, maybe
someone should.
Moschino can do it. Moschino has so much
Yeah, I would
potential to
love
do
to do
like a
it.
rotating creative director thing. So
So
much
cool.
options
Let's
out
put it
there.
out there to Moschino. They should do something like that for sure.
Right? Yeah, definitely. And I think after Jeremy Scott, I've been just very traumatized. So yeah,
Yeah, well, I don't know. I liked Adrian's stuff
I
as well.
loved
I think
I
it's all
loved the
about,
stuff after that. But yeah.
yeah, it's really hard. It's really hard, and it's all about timing and what the world's ready to
Hmm.
receive and what challenges are presented. I mean, I will always root for any creative director, even if I
Yeah.
don't necessarily love the output. The
Right.
pressure of those roles are
Yeah.
immense. And so the
Right.
best thing we can do as the fashion community is uplift and support. And in
Right.
private, say what you want. In private, say what you, but
Yeah.
don't, you know, we can be critical. Like we can't just love wash everything,
Hmm.
but it has to be
Hmm.
done, you know, with love and with support
Right.
for often a very young. I mean, the vicious critique of Duranlantic at Jean Paul Gaultier. It's like,
Hmm.
what are you doing? Just wait, give it some time, and you know,
Right.
give it some space. And I think he's really going to come into his own. I think that there was moments
Yeah.
in the couture that were very exciting. There were moments that
Yeah.
people didn't like, but a
Right.
polarizing designer is a good one in my opinion.
Right. No, no,
And so
100%.
it's yeah. There's always going to be work that we all hate, and sometimes it's the most ready to understand work that is celebrated most.
Hmm.
And we should be critical of
Right.
that too. You know, everyone loves a certain brand right now that I think is a little bit more surface level. And I think
Hmm.
sometimes we dig a bit deeper and realize that because we love it immediately, sometimes that's
Yeah.
actually a sign that we should probably be more skeptical of it. And the things that take
Right.
time to desire and take time to understand and love are often the things that will stand the test of time. Um,
Right.
so yeah, and then there's crap too. So you know, it's like a hard,
No,
a
I
hard.
think the recent Jean Paul Couture collection was insane. It was my favorite collection of the
Was
season.
it?
And I was
Yeah,
so, yeah, absolutely loved it. I was not a big fan of the debut, but I think that's what it shows, the transition and the growth and the
yeah,
perspective that every new collection will bring. And I think
and
we need
something
to be so much more accepting of new designers.
exactly. Some things hit immediately. Like Julian at
Right.
Dries Van Noten, it was like immediately made
And
sense.
yeah, yeah,
And then other things take a long time, and then sometimes
right,
it simply isn't a fit, and that's also
right.
okay. Like
Okay,
you
yeah.
know, sometimes people leave for the right reasons, and other
Hmm.
times it feels premature. Like Dario with Versace, it was like,
That
oh,
was
everyone, you know, people
Yeah,
wanted to know where that was
I in fact
going.
loved that collection. I thought it was so
Yeah,
brave, that
so,
collection. It was very interesting. That was
but he'll be
I don't
okay
know
as
if it
well. Like he'll
yeah,
be
yeah, he's
okay.
gonna
He'll land somewhere.
yeah,
He'll get a role. I
yeah,
know it.
definitely.
And you know, we shouldn't
Yeah.
feel too sorry for people who you know
Right.
sometimes they get great payouts as well. Like just get your money and move on, and do the next thing.
Yeah, it's
But
just a
also
job in the end. I know it's a very public job, but it's just a job. We've all had
it's
jobs
a
for
job.
like, that didn't
Yeah,
work out. So it's completely fine.
exactly. And so you know, hopefully we're in a good place as a you know, I feel excited by the
Yeah,
industry and by what everyone's up to. We definitely need to see more, you know, women creative directors. We need to see, you know, so
100%.
much change as well. Like I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to love wash the industry. Like, you know, we've gone
Mm-hmm.
straight back to sample size. We've gone, you know, like the
Yeah.
underrepresentation of people of color. Like, there's so many issues
Mm-hmm.
that most podcasts do spend a long time on. But I
Mm-hmm.
think, you know, if there's anything we can do for a new generation of designers that follow
Mm-hmm.
this podcast, it's to say, you know, be the change that you want to see, put out work, don't spend time agonizing over deadlines for some tutor who you don't agree with. Like, you know, as a tutor myself, like we should be ignored as much as possible, but the sentiment
Right.
of what we're saying should also be carried through into some of your work. Like, take a little bit of what I said, take a little bit of what my completely oppositional colleague said. Both our opinions can be valid. Like, don't be stressed by different feedback. You know, most tutors are really struggling with this tutor, most students, sorry, this tutor told me one thing and this tutor told me another. What should I do? You decide. Like, neither is tutor is wrong. One is probably very wrong for you, and probably one is very right for you. Or neither are quite right, and you then do the work to find what could work in between. And hopefully, if you're in a good establishment, you'll find that one or two mentors who you respect. And if you don't find them in your university, try and get out into the world, find them in, you know, a local tailor's, or do spend your summer in some random city if you have a distant relative who you can sleep on the sofa of. And if you have none of those things, then just become an absolute nerd on the internet and learn as best you can through podcasts and through YouTube series or wherever it is that you consume your information. But what you should not do is doom scroll on TikTok, get jealous of your peers who are doing well, or just spend hours bitching about the establishment that you're paying thousands of pounds to be in. You know, if you really resent it, get out. Or if you think you can stomach it, find a way to do that in a productive manner. Which is easier said than done. And like, no one's telling, we're not saying it's easy. It's very hard. And if you're at St. Martin's, it's obviously going to be easier because you're being exposed every day to brilliant people. But if you're somewhere where you feel like, oh, I'm the only one and I need to, you know, then it's kind of, sadly, it's still your job to go and find it. It's a shame you're not where you wanted to be, but also go out and reach for it. You know, it's really, really tough and really competitive, but there is hope and you can find it. And you just got to be so proactive.
Yeah, in the end, you need to make your own path. We can complain all we want, but in the end, you got to do the work to get to a certain point.
True. And also have a complaint. Like, I do it all the time. Like, have
complaining is fun. Let's be honest. Bitching is such a fun. Like, you know, end of the day, bitching with your best friends is fun.
Yeah, it's totally fun. But after you've done it, get in action mode.
Yeah, exactly.
Channel it somewhere, because I do hear it a lot. I overhear the students, and I'm like, oh, God. Just maybe do some work. Like, don't worry about what this one tutor has told you. You know, it's one tutor's opinion. It's not the end of the world. Same with like getting into press shows as well. People put a lot of weight on like whether they were selected for the university show. Doesn't matter. No one cares in the end. No one remembers. One person hits and goes viral, sometimes two. That great for that person. They forge a career for a bit. But everyone's got a challenge. You know, it's and people come at their own pace, and I really fundamentally believe that good work rises. I think it does. You know, there's people I follow when they've got 1,000 followers, and then I check again, it's like, oh yeah, they've got 17,000 now. Like, because people see it when it's good, they see it and they follow it. And it just does happen. I think I really believe it.
I think definitely. I think the community in general is very supportive, the fashion community. I think one of the most supportive and uplifting communities. Of course, there's a little bitching and things like that.
Yeah, but I
think
know.
overall,
I don't see it as much as people like to think. Like, it feels like we're still all harboring at this like 90s narrative that everyone's a bitch and doing cocaine in the toilets. Like, I don't see it.
I don't think anyone is doing that. Like, most people are not doing that. People don't have time to do cocaine in the bathroom. No one has the time. I wish we had the time to do that, but we don't.
Honestly, like, my main advice is to get out more. Like, they're hardly going out. Like, they're working so hard. So, you know, please do go out. Please do spend time at the local bar. Or if you don't like that world, then find what the other version of that is for you, whether that's like swimming pond or reading certain books or gaming culture, or I don't know, whatever floats your boat, but socialize as much as possible, whatever.
Especially with this digital social media era, I think people need to connect and talk more anyway. And fashion, especially for fashion, we need to do that.
Try and meet them, like, be a bit weird, like message people and be like, do you want to go for a coffee? And like, maybe it's weird, but just try it. And you might not get along, but it's 2 hours of your life. And most of the time you will get along.
Most people say yes, because people also want to be with other people. Like, you know, if you text them, there's a 90% chance they're going to be like, oh yeah, sure. So I think people definitely need to try more.
I think understanding what your taste is really important as well. Like, taste is not used enough. I think universities don't really talk about taste enough because people are scared of of the conversation around what is good taste, what is bad taste, blah blah blah. But
Mm-hmm.
students need to understand what their taste is and then align
Yeah.
themselves with people that share, sometimes challenge, but I usually believe in surrounding yourself with people who share the same taste,
Right.
like, because it makes
Right.
you feel happy. Like, there's nothing better
Yeah.
than loving something and finding out that the person next to you loves it as well. It's bonding,
Right.
it's liberating.
Yeah.
It's good too if the person disagrees, have that chat, but I find that quite exhausting. I don't like being around people who I don't like what they like. It's
Yeah,
like, oh,
100%.
yeah, I just want to be around people who love what I love. Like, we can bond over films and music and
Yeah.
theatre and colour and combination and the way someone styles something. Like, and so that's, that's what I try and do, whether that's in friendships or with who comes and joins the team. It's like just spending time with
Right.
people who like, when we make something together, we're all collectively excited by it.
Mm-hmm.
And you can find out very quickly when people send you emails to like intern, you can find out very quickly if they've just applied because they saw that you're on the schedule or whether they actually genuinely
Mm-hmm.
like what you make. And it tends to
Mm-hmm.
be the people that like what you make that last for a
Mm-hmm.
year or longer.
Yeah.
And the people who are just there for a CV credit who tend to do a couple of weeks and then it doesn't make sense. So, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and you can decide that for yourself as well. Like, if you're a young student who's interning, if you arrive somewhere and you don't like it, leave. Like, you
Mm-hmm.
don't owe these people anything if you're not enjoying it. I
Right.
speak to a lot of interns who are staying in environments that they don't enjoy because they
Mm.
think that they have to, and it's
Yeah.
unpaid, by the way. So, like, if you don't like it, leave.
Yeah.
Um,
No.
or if it's paid and you've signed a contract, see it through and learn what you need to learn. But if you feel that
Yeah.
you're being taken advantage of, I think it's really important to like set your own terms. And I certainly
Right.
did, and ended up being very lucky with having had some really negative experiences. I ended up with an
Mm-hmm.
amazing experience with Jonathan Anderson under Sean, an amazing
Mm-hmm.
experience with Stephen Phillip, this vintage archivist. We worked closely with Kim Jones and various other
Mm-hmm.
brand research. And when you're happy, you thrive, and when you enjoy something, you carry that through into your own work. And so I think that that's really important as well. And if you're in a city where there are no initiatives like this, then you will have to do even harder work probably to earn enough money to
Yeah.
come to a city that
Right.
you can do it.
Yeah.
Or you can be really brave and try and make that community in your own city. I
Right.
do think that that's really hard, and probably I
Yeah.
just think, come to Paris, come to London, guys. Like, there's a reason we're all here. But that's a very
Right.
European-centric thing to say. It could be. I spent time in New Delhi actually for the Circular Design Challenge, and there's a whole community
You
there.
worked with Divyanshu. I saw.
With Divyanshu,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
God, that's a different story. But yeah, it's
Yeah.
there are communities all over the world. Find them, find the
Mm.
ones that make sense for you, and if you don't find
Right.
them, they can be found. You just need to follow the right accounts on social media, and for that we are
Mm.
grateful to Instagram. As difficult
Yeah.
as our relationship is with social media, luckily it's very easy to find your people now, and same
Right.
with TikTok. The algorithm's kind of showing you often
Yeah.
what you want to see. So
Yeah.
follow those people, message those people, visit them. Most of them won't reply to you, but that's fine.
Mm.
One might. If you send 100, one will. That Lady Gaga thing that she kept saying. There could be
Yeah.
100 people in a room.
My God.
And
Exactly. Yeah.
it's a bit like that. I send so many emails
That is
before we
so
get here.
true.
It really
I think,
is.
yeah, yeah, definitely. And for people who don't live in like New York, London, Milan, or whatever, I think it's so important to just learn everything on the internet. That's how I learned everything I know. Everything I know is via YouTube, Tumblr, and God knows
Yeah.
what. So
And
that's
then
a great
people do
way.
forge little communities. Like Copenhagen is amazing right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Antwerp is amazing.
Mm,
And probably more. I mean, these are the things I know, and there'll be, hopefully, the more and more you listen to, the more you realize that actually there are things happening, and there's great people all over
right,
the world. Industry,
right.
creating spaces for people to feel seen and to create community. And as long as you can pay your rent and buy some
Mm,
groceries, which will usually be doing something you hate. I mean, I worked in catering for years as a waiter,
mm,
like really depressing doing these shifts. But try and find a job that's a little bit inspiring. Like at least I was doing waiting at like the Royal Albert Hall and the Natural History
Hmm.
Museum and Lord's Cricket Ground, and like, you know, try and be in an environment that inspires you. So even if you're pouring champagne or serving a canapé, at least there's a beautiful, you know, carved ceiling to stare at,
Right.
that inspires an idea. Don't work in environments that you despise. You know, there's got to be
Definitely.
something, whether it's a library or a garden or an allotment, or, you know, maybe you like peeling vegetables, maybe you like, you know, try and align. I don't know what it is. Depends what inspires
Yeah.
you. But the money job should be something you vaguely enjoy,
Yeah.
if you can, and just keep throwing out applications to have a
Right.
little side hustle.
Yeah.
Always have a money job, because the money job will allow
Hmm.
you to work and buy fabric, and
Hmm.
you know, it's really hard. But you know, there's a certain amount of privilege. You know, I always
Yeah.
had. I always knew that if I couldn't pay the rent, I could move home and I could live
Hmm.
with my parents, and that shouldn't be left unsaid. The level of privilege that exists in
Hmm.
that knowledge, which some people don't have, and it's
Don't
even
have.
harder
Yeah.
for that. And then there's people like,
Right.
you know, way more privileged than me, who had, you know, were being bankrolled and all of that. So everyone's in this ladder, and everyone's at a
Hmm.
different position. And I found myself, you know, being really critical of nepo designers and really
Hmm.
critical of people who had, like, you know, immense amount of family support, but then I clocked myself at the immense amount that I had compared to someone
Right.
else. So, you know,
Exactly.
everyone has a different level of support, and I think it's a challenge, and it's certainly more of a challenge for certain people. But you know, get involved, and hopefully it's possible. You know, people have done it and will do it, and for some it's harder, and for others it's easier. And welcome to the
Yeah.
world. You know.
And that's always the case. God. Oh my God, it was amazing speaking to you, Max.
Thank you. I hope I didn't talk too long.
No, no, no. I loved it. We spoke about some very interesting things. I learned a lot, and especially, like, oh my God, I'll just sum it up later. It was amazing speaking to you.
Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this conversation, please do not forget to like, share, and subscribe. I'll see you in the next episode of Speaking of Fashion. Thank you.